The Zephyr station hung in the darkness of space like a great silver wheel, spinning slowly against the distant stars. Inside its main council chamber, representatives from 50 different alien species gathered around a massive table. The air was thick with tension and the strange smells of 1,000 different worlds. Princess of the Empire stood at the head of the table, her purple skin gleaming under the bright lights. Her tall frame towered over the other delegates, and her four arms folded across her chest with a gesture of complete superiority. "The humans are a joke," announced loudly, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation like a blade. "They should not even be sitting at this table. Their species survives only because they are desperate and lucky. They have no true strength, no real intelligence, and no place in a civilized galactic order." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned toward the human delegation in the corner of the room. Captain Hayes sat calmly in his chair, his dark hair and blue eyes showing no reaction to the princess's words. He had heard this kind of insult before from many alien species, but something about the way said it made him pay attention. She was not just insulting humans out of anger. She was making a statement of fact in her own mind, and that made her truly dangerous. Stood up slowly. The movement seemed to surprise, and her eyes fixed on him with sudden interest. He was a tall human, but still not as tall as the princess. He wore the uniform of the Earth Defense Fleet, a simple dark blue suit with his rank clearly marked. "Princess," said in a calm, steady voice, "you speak with confidence about things you do not understand. Humans have survived on a world that would kill most species in hours. We have built a civilization despite having no natural weapons, no extra limbs, no superior strength. We have reached the stars not because it was easy, but because we refused to accept that anything was impossible." Laughed. It was a harsh, sharp sound that echoed through the chamber. "Pretty words from a weak creature. Words do not change facts, human. Your species is inferior, and no amount of talking will change that." Took a step forward. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "Then let us settle this with a real test. Not words, but action. I challenge you to a formal combat simulation competition. 1 week from now, here on the Zephyr station. The winner proves their point." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Even seemed surprised, though a cruel smile spread across her face. Continued, making his offer even more interesting. "If you win, Princess, humanity accepts a reduced status in the Galactic Council. We will take whatever position you deem appropriate for a species you believe to be inferior. But if I win, the Empire must acknowledge human equality in all galactic affairs. And you must accept a binding marriage treaty with a human of the Council's choosing." Slav grew louder and more mocking. "You would gamble the future of your entire species on a competition with me. The human mind truly is weak. Very well, I accept your pathetic challenge. In 1 week, I will defeat you and prove to the entire galaxy that humans are nothing but insects crawling on a rock." She snapped 2 of her 4 fingers at her attendants. The High Council Master, an elderly named, stepped forward with ancient texts. The binding wager ceremony was performed with careful precision. Both signed documents in their own languages, confirming that they understood the terms and accepted them fully. The ceremony was sealed with ritual words spoken in the old tongue of the galactic founding species. Once the ceremony ended, turned and walked out of the chamber without looking back. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. He had just committed himself and his entire species to an impossible task. Was right about one thing: the odds were against him. They were faster, stronger, and more durable than humans in almost every way. Her 4 arms gave her advantages that human fighters could only dream about. She had never lost a combat simulation, and she had been training in the martial arts since before was even born. But had something that did not have. He had been forced his entire life to think differently, to find solutions that others could not see, to survive against odds that would crush most species. He had studied every piece of information about that existed in human databases. He knew their culture, their values, their honor codes, and most importantly, their weaknesses. As he walked through the corridors of the station toward the human quarters, thought of his younger sister, Lisa. She was back on Earth, slowly dying from a genetic disease that only advanced medicine could treat. His family had been saving money for years, hoping that they might one day afford the treatment. But it was too expensive, far beyond what any human family could pay. This wager was about more than just proving the strength of humanity, for it was about saving his sister's life. If he won, they would be forced to share their medical knowledge with Earth. Lisa would live. He could not afford to lose. The next morning, boarded the transport ship back to Earth. He had 1 week to prepare, 1 week to figure out how to defeat an opponent who was superior in almost every measurable way. As the ship lifted off from the Zephyr station and began its journey toward the blue planet he called home, stared out the window at the stars. Would expect him to fight like a human soldier, using direct force and formal technique. That was exactly what was counting on. He would not give her what she expected. Instead, he would teach her something she had never learned. Never underestimate an opponent just because they are different from you. The game had begun. Arrived at the Earth Defense Force training facility in Colorado before sunrise. The morning air was cold and thin at this altitude, and he breathed it in deeply. This base had been built specifically to prepare human soldiers for combat in any environment imaginable. It was where the best of Earth's warriors trained, and it was where would prepare for the most important fight of his life. Commander greeted him in the main hangar. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with gray streaking her dark hair and scars on her face from 3 decades of military service. She had trained since he was a young recruit, and she knew his capabilities and his limitations better than anyone else alive. "So you challenged an alien princess," said without any greeting. "You want me to say that was stupid, or do you already know that?" Managed a small smile. "I need your help, not to make me stronger. That will not work. I need you to teach me how to think like her and use that against her." Nodded slowly. She gestured for to follow her deeper into the facility. For the next 6 days, they worked together with intense focus. They analyzed every piece of data about the species. They studied previous combat records, watching recordings of her victories again and again, looking for patterns, looking for the habits that great warriors develop when they have never faced real opposition. The training was not what expected, did not push him to run faster or fight harder. Instead, she pushed him to think. She created scenarios where raw strength meant nothing. She placed him in environments where the rules changed constantly. She taught him that every opponent has a breaking point, not in their body, but in their mind. "Your advantage is here," said, tapping on the chest over his heart. "You understand suffering. You understand failure. You have had to adapt your entire life just to survive in a universe that was not built for humans. The princess has never had to adapt. She has never failed. That is her weakness." Meanwhile, the princess went about her days in a completely different way. She trained occasionally, the way a champion fighter trains when they know no one can defeat them. She spent most of her time at royal functions, drinking with other nobles, and accepting congratulations from people who believed she had already won her wager. Her advisors tried to warn her. The oldest of her counselors approached her one evening in the royal gardens. His skin was darker purple than's, marked with the lines of someone who had lived through many conflicts. "My princess," said carefully, "the human has spent every day training. Perhaps you should do the same. In combat, preparation is often the difference between victory and defeat." Looked at him with eyes that showed pure disgust. "You have become old and weak. The human cannot defeat me. Look at these arms, at this body. I am perfection. I do not need to spend time training against an opponent I will crush like an insect. My superiority is not something I must prove. It simply is." She turned away from him, dismissing him without another word. This was who was. a being so convinced of her own greatness that she could not imagine a world where she might lose. Her entire life had been a series of victories. Every competition, every combat, every challenge had ended the same way. The princess always won, so why would this be any different? But something that did not know was happening on Earth was not just training his body. He was studying her psychology, her culture, her values. He was learning that they had a strict honor code. They believed that real warriors fought face to face, that tricks were beneath them, that true strength came from direct confrontation. This belief was so deeply embedded in their culture that it had become a weakness. Realized something important. He did not need to be as strong as, he only needed to be clever. He only needed to make her break her own rules, to make her choose between her pride and her safety. And he knew exactly how to do it. On the 5th day of training, his family called him through the communication system. His sister Lisa appeared on the screen, her small face pale from the disease that was slowly destroying her body. She smiled when she saw him, though the effort seemed to cost her energy. "You are going to win," she said simply. It was not a question, it was a statement of faith. Nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he found his voice, he said, "I promise, Lisa. I am going to win and you are going to be cured. You are going to live a long life and you are going to see things I cannot even imagine yet." After the call ended, sat alone in the training room. His hands trembled slightly with the weight of responsibility. He was not just fighting for himself or even for human pride. He was fighting for the girl in that video who wanted so badly to live. Found him there and said nothing. She simply sat down beside him and waited. When was ready, he stood up and returned to training. By the end of the 6th day was ready. He was not stronger than the princess. He was not faster, but he was smarter, hungrier, and more willing to do whatever it took to win. He had studied the simulation arena that they would fight in. He had memorized every detail. He knew exactly how to use the environment, how to trigger the safety systems, and how to turn his own values against her. On the morning of the 7th day, boarded a transport ship back to the Zephyr station. As the Earth fell away beneath him and the stars surrounded his ship on all sides, he closed his eyes and visualized the fight. He did not imagine victory. He imagined every possible move could make and every counter to that move. His final words to him echoed in his mind. "Do not think about winning. Think about surviving. Think about what is worth fighting for. When you remember that, the victory will come." Back on the Zephyr station, Princess prepared for the combat simulation with the casual attitude of someone walking to a pleasant afternoon activity. She did not know that had spent the last week studying her like scientists study an insect. She did not know that he had uncovered the one thing that would be her undoing. She only knew that she would fight, she would win, and her superiority would be proven to the entire galaxy. The arena was being prepared. The simulation systems were being tested. In less than 24 hours, everything would change. The arena was unlike anything most species would choose for a fair fight. The simulation had been designed to test adaptability and survival, not formal combat. It depicted a damaged space station with multiple levels, broken gravity in certain sections, floating debris, and systems that flickered between working and non-working. The environment would change constantly during the fight, forcing both combatants to adjust their strategies. Princess entered the arena first, walking with absolute confidence. She wore a combat suit that enhanced her already superior strength, giving her extra power in each of her 4 arms. Her muscles rippled beneath her purple skin as she stretched and prepared. The crowd that filled the observation gallery above erupted in cheers. No one doubted what they were about to witness. Everyone expected the princess to destroy the human within minutes. Captain Hayes entered from the opposite side. He was smaller, weaker looking, and he carried himself with none of the arrogance that displayed. He wore a simple combat suit without any enhancements. He looked almost pathetic standing next to the towering alien warrior. The referee, a neutral magistrate, stood between them. "You understand the rules," he announced to both fighters. "Combat ends when one combatant is unable to continue, when they surrender, or when they violate the honor code of this station. The arena will provide challenges and you must survive them. Begin." Moved immediately. She had never been one to waste time. Her speed was incredible, faster than most human eyes could follow. She crossed half the arena in seconds, her four arms reaching out to grab or strike from multiple angles at once. Did not try to match her strength. Instead, he ran, using the debris and the shifting gravity to his advantage. He pulled himself behind a large piece of broken metal, forcing to follow him through a narrow passage. When she emerged, the gravity in that section suddenly shifted, adjusted instantly, moving along what had become a wall as if it were natural. Her physiology allowed her to ignore gravity changes that would have confused a human. For the first 10 minutes, the fight looked exactly like everyone expected, was clearly superior. She was faster, stronger, and more coordinated. She cornered multiple times, driving him backward, forcing him to desperately dodge her attacks. The crowd began to shift uncomfortably. This was supposed to be entertainment, but it looked more like an execution. Then the second phase of the simulation began. An alarm sounded, and suddenly there was fire in one section of the arena. The simulation created smoke and heat, forcing both fighters to move into a different area. This was where his real plan began. He led deeper into the station, moving through corridors that seemed to have no advantage for him, but had studied the blueprints of this arena for days. He knew where every system was located. He knew which support structures were actually part of the simulation and which ones were real. Most importantly, he knew that in the lower level of the arena, there was a section where the medical emergency response team was stationed. This section was protected by safety protocols that absolutely could not be. Pressed her advantage, driving forward with relentless attacks. Her four arms struck from angles that human fighters could not even imagine, but kept moving, kept leading her deeper into the arena. His strategy was working. His confidence made her predictable. She attacked the same way again and again because it had always worked before. In a moment of careful planning, allowed to corner him in the lower section of the arena. She had him backed against a wall, and there was nowhere for him to run. Her four arms came down in strikes that would have killed a human in a normal fight, but had already triggered the emergency protocols. The safety systems of the arena suddenly activated. Support beams in that section began to collapse. The simulation created an earthquake, and alarms blared throughout the arena. The medical emergency response team came rushing out of their protected section. They were human technicians, but in the simulation, they appeared as real people who could be hurt. Had a choice to make in that moment. She could finish, completing her victory and claiming the wager, or she could save the people who were about to be crushed by falling debris. For the first time in her life, Princess of the Empire faced a true test. It was not a test of strength or speed. It was a test of her values. Her culture taught her that honor was everything. Warriors fought with honor, protected the innocent, and valued life. These were the core beliefs of the taught to every member of the species from birth. Made her choice. She moved faster than she had moved in the entire fight. Her four arms caught the falling beam and held it, supporting the weight while the technicians scrambled to safety. The strain was enormous even for her enhanced physiology, but she held firm until they were clear. It was in that moment, while her strength was focused on saving lives instead of winning the fight, that she broke the arena rules. The monitor recorded her violation. The referee called out his judgment immediately. The princess has abandoned combat engagement to address a safety crisis. This violates the formal structure of arena combat. The match is ended. Captain Hayes is declared the victor. The crowd fell silent. Then chaos erupted. Many in the audience could not believe what they had just witnessed. The princess, the warrior who had never lost, had been defeated. Not by greater strength, not by superior combat skills, but by her own code of honor. stood in the lower section of the arena, her chest heaving with exertion and emotion. She stared at, and her eyes burned with fury and something else that she could not yet name. She had broken her own rules. She had chosen to save lives and lost the competition because of it. Walked toward her slowly. He was breathing hard, his body covered in sweat, but his face showed no victory celebration. He stopped in front of the princess and spoke quietly, so only she could hear. "You are stronger than I am, princess. You always will be, but a true warrior is not measured by strength alone. You proved that today when you chose to protect those people instead of defeating me. That choice makes you more than just a warrior. It makes you someone worth respecting." Had no words. The wager was complete. According to the binding agreement, she now belonged to Earth. She would be forced to marry a human. The greatest humiliation of her life was just beginning, and somehow she knew that her life would never be the same. Princess arrived at the Earth diplomatic compound in Colorado 30 days after her defeat. The journey from the Zephyr station had been long and humiliating. She was escorted by human soldiers, treated like a prisoner instead of a royal. The Empire had disowned her publicly, declaring her a failure and a disgrace to her family. Her father had not spoken to her since the day of the fight. The diplomatic compound was a sprawling complex of buildings set against the backdrop of the Rocky Mountains. 2. It looked like the dwelling of a primitive species. The buildings were made of simple materials. The technology was far less advanced than what she was used to. She was assigned to a suite of rooms that would serve as her quarters for the coming months while the marriage arrangements were finalized. Captain Hayes showed her to her rooms himself. He was polite, professional, and completely respectful of her status. But too, his politeness felt like an insult. How dare he treat her with respect when she was being forced to live on this backward planet? How dare he be kind when she was in the midst of the greatest humiliation of her life? "You will find everything you need here," said, gesturing around the rooms. "If you need anything else, you can contact me at any time. I want you to be comfortable during your stay." Turned away from him without response. She sat on the edge of the sleeping platform and refused to come out of her rooms for 2 days. Food was brought to her, but she barely touched it. Water was left for her, and she drank only enough to survive. She was not going to cooperate with this humiliation. She was going to make her suffering clear to everyone. On the 3rd day, something changed. Heard voices outside her quarters, and despite herself, she looked out to see what was happening. Was in the corridor, speaking with a young girl who could not have been more than 15 years old. The girl was thin and pale, and she moved with obvious difficulty. "This is my sister, Lisa," was saying to one of the compound staff members. "The princess has agreed to allow the medical technology to help her. We need to set up the treatment chamber in the medical wing." Watched as supported his sister as she walked, his arm around her waist to help her move. The girl was clearly very ill, had seen sick people before, but she had never seen a human so close to death, yet was smiling and speaking to his sister with such love and gentleness that it made something stir in his chest that she could not name. That night left her quarters for the first time. She walked through the compound, observing everything. She saw humans laughing together in common areas. She saw a family with small children eating a meal together. She saw someone stop to help another person pick up something they had dropped, not expecting anything in return. These small acts of kindness seemed normal to the humans, but they were completely foreign to. Over the following weeks, was forced into constant contact with. The diplomatic protocol required them to spend time together, to learn about each other's cultures, to prepare for the official marriage ceremony. Never complained or treated her with anything less than respect, even when she was cold and dismissive. He took her to the medical wing to show her how the technology was being used to treat his sister. Lisa was already showing improvement from the treatments. The disease that had been slowly killing her was being reversed. Watchd's face as he looked at his sister and realized that this had been his goal from the beginning. He had not fought for pride or for human honor on the galactic stage. He had fought for his sister's life. Explained to how much this meant to him. My family is everything to me. My sister was dying and there was nothing I could do about it. I would have done anything to save her life. When I challenged you, I was fighting for her. I will always fight for the people I care about. Something in those words pierced through anger and pride. She had never had to fight for anyone. She had been born into power and privilege. Everything she wanted had been given to her. She had never had to sacrifice anything for another living being. A few days later, was alone in the compound's garden when she witnessed something that shocked her. A group of humans were helping an elderly woman carry heavy bags from a ground transport. The woman was not their family member. She was not anyone important. She was simply a neighbor who needed help, and the humans stopped what they were doing to assist her. Approached the group afterward and asked why they had helped her. A young woman named turned to her and smiled. She needed help. We could help, so we helped. That is what you do for people. The simplicity of the answer amazed. There was no calculation, no expectation of reward, no political advantage. Humans simply helped each other because that is what they did. Found her in the garden later that evening. Was sitting on a bench, looking out at the mountains in the distance. She still had not softened toward him, but she was beginning to understand him. I have been thinking, said without looking at him. Your species is very strange. You are weak individually, yet you accomplish great things together. You are mortal and short-lived, yet you act as if each moment matters. You have nothing, yet you act as if you are wealthy. I do not understand your people. Sat down beside her, leaving careful distance between them. We understand that together we are strong. We understand that because our lives are short, they are precious. We understand that what we have is never enough unless we share it with others. These are not weaknesses, Princess. These are the things that make us human. Your sister will live, said simply. It was not a question. Yes, replied. She will live a long life. Thanks to you, she has a future now. Felt something shift inside her. Had not asked her for this help. The had offered the medical technology as part of the marriage treaty. And yet, was thanking her as if she had made a choice, as if she had done something kind instead of simply following the rules. I do not like your planet, said. It is inefficient and the gravity is wrong. I know, said, but you are here, and I think if you give us a chance, you might find something you did not expect to find on Earth. What is that? Asked. Did not answer with words. Instead, he simply sat with her and watched the sun set over the mountains. For the first time since her arrival on Earth, Princess did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like someone who was slowly being given the chance to understand a world that was completely different from everything she had ever known. The transformation had begun. The marriage ceremony took place on a day when the sky was clear and blue, and the sun shone down on the Colorado mountains with perfect clarity. The event was broadcast across the entire Galactic Council, watched by billions of beings from hundreds of different worlds. It was meant to be a symbol of the treaty between Earth and the Empire, but it was about to become something much more significant. Princess stood in a private chamber, preparing for the ceremony. She wore a traditional wedding garment that had been modified slightly to accommodate Earth's gravity and customs. Her purple skin seemed to shimmer in the light, and her 4 arms were adorned with ceremonial bands that marked her as a royal bride. Her attendant, an older woman named, helped her prepare. Had been with since childhood, and she had supported the princess through every humiliation since the loss at the Zephyr station. The entire Empire watches, said quietly. They will see you unite with the human. They will see our greatest warrior bound to a lesser species by the rules of a wager that you should have won. Looked at herself in the mirror. 3 months had passed since her arrival on Earth. 3 months since the worst day of her life. But somehow, those 3 months had changed everything about the way she understood the universe. I no longer believe I should have won, said simply. I was blind. The human was not fighting against me. He was fighting for his sister's life. I was fighting for pride. How could I have believed that my pride was worth more than his sister's existence? Had no answer for her. In another chamber prepared in human style, he wore a formal suit, deep blue and perfectly tailored to his frame. His sister Lisa stood beside him, now healthy and strong, her color returned and her energy restored. The treatment had cured her disease completely. She would have a full, long life ahead of her. "Are you nervous?" Lisa asked her brother. "Yes," admitted. "I'm about to marry an alien princess who hated me 3 months ago. I would be foolish not to be nervous." "She does not hate you anymore," Lisa said with the confidence of youth. "I have seen how she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. She respects you now, maybe more than that." Did not respond. He was not certain what felt. He had challenged her, defeated her, and then shown her a different way of understanding the universe. He did not know if respect and admiration could grow into something deeper. He only knew that he would do everything in his power to make this marriage work, to bridge the gap between their two species, and to show that there was more to strength than the power of individual warriors. The ceremony began in the great hall of the diplomatic compound. It was a unique blending of human and traditions. There were human musicians and alien instruments creating strange, beautiful harmonies. Humans and sat together, united for the first time in a truly social gathering instead of just a political one. When entered, the crowd fell silent. She walked forward with her head held high, her 4 arms visible to everyone watching. She was not trying to hide what she was. She was showing the galaxy exactly who she was, a princess, proud and powerful and also capable of change. When she reached, they turned to face each other. The diplomat conducting the ceremony spoke words in both human and languages, officially binding them together according to the ancient laws of both species. Then came the moment that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of remaining silent as was traditional, asked to speak. The diplomat looked surprised but allowed it, turned to face the great assembly of creatures watching her. "I came to Earth as a prisoner," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I came as a defeated warrior who had lost a wager and paid the price for her arrogance. I believed that I was superior because I was strong, because I was fast, because I had all the physical advantages that evolution could provide to a warrior. I was wrong." The assembly erupted in murmurs. This was not what anyone expected to hear from the princess of the. Continued without pause. "I have spent 3 months on this planet, and I have learned something that my entire civilization has forgotten. Strength is not measured in muscle or speed or the number of limbs you possess. True strength comes from the willingness to sacrifice for others, from the ability to adapt and change, from the courage to admit when you are wrong. These are the qualities that make humans remarkable. These are the qualities that have allowed them to survive and thrive on a world that would destroy most species." She pointed directly at the human delegation. "Humanity deserves a place of honor in the Galactic Council, not as an afterthought, not as an experiment, but as equals. I stand before you today as someone who was defeated by a human warrior, and I declare that I am proud to have been defeated by him. I am proud to join my life to his. I am proud to call myself his wife." Reached out with one of her 4 hands and took's hand. The gesture was simple, but its meaning was profound. "I am carrying our child," announced, and the assembly erupted in shock and gasps. "A being who will be part and part human. This child will be the first of a new generation, a bridge between our species, proof that strength and intelligence and courage exist in all beings who are willing to evolve." The ceremony continued, but everything had changed. The marriage was no longer just the fulfillment of a wager. It was the beginning of something new, the first real step toward unity between alien species that had always kept their distance from one another. In the weeks that followed, the Empire reluctantly accepted its pronouncements. The Galactic Council voted to recognize humanity as equals in all affairs of state. Medical research was opened up between the species. Educational exchanges began. Young humans traveled to worlds, and young came to Earth to learn how humans survived and thrived. 6 months later, Lisa presented her brother with a gift. It was a picture, drawn by her own hand, showing and together, with a small figure that represented the child growing in its body. She had drawn them smiling together, united. "This is the future," Lisa said simply. "This is what you created when you decided to fight not with anger but with understanding." And stood together on an observation platform orbiting Earth, looking down at the blue world below. His hand rested on her pregnant belly, and her expression was calm and thoughtful. "I am sorry," said, "for the words I spoke on the Zephyr station, for the way I disrespected your species, for the arrogance that nearly cost me everything that matters." Squeezed her hand gently. "You are not the same being who arrived on this planet. None of us are. We have all learned something. You taught me that not all strength is obvious. I taught you that sometimes the greatest strength is gentleness. Together, we are teaching the galaxy something new." "What is that?" asked. "That different does not mean inferior," replied. "That strength takes many forms. That change is possible even for those who have never imagined it. That when you stop judging and start understanding, the universe becomes so much larger and more beautiful than you ever thought it could be." The planet Earth continued its eternal rotation below them, and on its surface, a new era was beginning. An age where humans and aliens would finally see each other not as threats or inferiors, but as beings with different gifts and abilities, all worthy of respect and understanding. It had started with a wager and a human warrior willing to sacrifice everything for those he loved. It had been transformed by an alien princess willing to admit she was wrong and brave enough to change. And it would continue, growing and evolving, bringing species together in ways that once seemed impossible. The future was uncertain, but it was no longer divided. It was united, bridged by love and understanding and the willingness to see strength in all its different forms.